on Tuesday the 28th of May 2013. Claire, do we have any Sederunt apologies?
Chairman, apologies from Councillor Karen Carruthers and Elaine Dennis. I believe it's an apology as well.
Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest? No. Okay, moving on to item 3, minutes of the meeting of the 26th of March 2013. Are we happy that this is an accurate minute? Good, thank you. Approved. Excellent. And on to item 4, appointments to John Wallace Trust. We have Gillian Brideston here to answer any questions on this report. It's been to us, I think, twice, possibly 3 times, and I think it's also been to full council. And I think we've found a very sensible and logical workaround to make sure that this particular trust is populated properly and with the correct people. So, do you have anything further to add?
Just that we had some further advice. Should we move forward as a subcommittee? I believe that governance advice is that we should now be seeking 7 members or 9 members. It has to be an odd number, perhaps.
Chairman, yeah, all membership of all committees on the basis of proportionality on odd numbers. So we need to agree what that basis of proportionality is first, and then we would seek membership from within the Education Committee. So I would ask that you need to agree that first. Obviously, we can't have an even number of 8.
Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Chair. I'm delighted with the terms of the report. That's absolutely fine. But slightly confused as to why we should need 7 or 9. This committee has functioned, and I've been a member of it since 1999, and it's always been manned, if you like, for want of a better word, although clearly there are female members there, but it's been manned, it's just terminology, by 8 members, and we've also always managed to achieve success by agreement, consensus, no proportionality. But I would hope that we would revert back to the format that has worked particularly well, where the 2 ward members that cover this area would be allowed to be appointed to that committee, which is what has traditionally taken place, and I see no reason why that should change.
Chairman, I'm not saying it has to be 7, 9 or 11. I'm just saying that it's on the basis of proportionality. That's for you to determine, and then within the groups, the group leader would advise the proper officer of who those members are.
Thanks. The officer doesn't want to speak again, but I don't see any problem with the 8. I'm quite happy to support Councillor Dempster because you've always got the casting vote at the chair. It doesn't matter who's here.
That's a very fair point, I suppose. I mean, I think my understanding of this was to ensure that the local members in the 2 wards were able to sit on this trust and represent their local, the local needs of the trust. I didn't appreciate that in governance terms, because we were setting it up as a subcommittee, that could be problematic. Is there a way that we can get around that to ensure that the 8 members from those 2 wards would be able to populate this particular subcommittee?
For your indulgence, Chair, I would suggest either here or full council could agree to that arrangement. It's no breach of council protocol. If the council agree it, then that would be a way forward, I would suggest. And anyway, as soon as somebody's absent, there is an uneven number, and the chairperson has always the casting vote. So there's no an issue about how these things are eventually determined, each item on the agenda. It's simply the management of the trust, and it is very much a local trust. And I always use maybe an unfair example. I'm sure the Stranraer folk wouldn't want me in Stranraer Common Good because it's a local issue that would be determined by local members, and this is the same. It relates simply to Wallace Hall Academy and surrounding district.
If it's a subcommittee of the Education Committee, it has to be within the membership of the Education Committee. So, as Councillor Dempster suggested, perhaps you let the full council determine this one, draw a delegation from this committee and let them appoint to the subcommittee. And then it's with the membership of the whole council, not just the Education Committee.
Well, with members' agreement, I would so move that we refer this to the next appropriate full council with the recommendations that the 8 members be from 2 wards sitting within the remit of this trust.
Can I just inquire into the capital value of this fund and the income that arises from it, please?
We have I don't have the full financial report, but I'm aware of what we have to distribute. So this year, for last year's distributions, we have £8,040. We have 19 applications, and we make determination on the basis of £1.29 per pupil for travel. That's the scale.
Do you have any other members?
Sorry, Chair, I missed that. I was being distracted by a colleague who was asking me a question. Can you repeat it, please?
I said, do you have anything further to add?
No, I'm happy and I'm satisfied that the report's fine. And if the Education Committee insist on determining it today, I'll settle for that. I just think, in the interest of fairness, that is what I would hope we would do. We would eventually have the 8 members that represent that area as the makeup of the subcommittee. But I'm completely relaxed about how it's done. I just think that that's what happened in the past. It seems to be no reason to change what is a good working arrangement. And there's a cross-section. The leader of the council will be there, the SNP party members there, and Labour Party members. So I don't see an issue with it.
No, I mean, I don't know whether we want to table it as an urgent motion on Thursday. I don't know whether there is urgency to the applications being determined, or whether it would wait until June. Gillian?
I think we've been waiting since last May to make appointments. So you could look at that. There is some urgency. You could also look that youngsters have been waiting for a wee while, so could potentially delay till June.
If it were left to me, Chair, with your indulgence, I would ask that it comes as a matter of urgency. No because it's urgent business, but because I have been contacted, I'm sure other members of because I was a member of the trust before, I have been contacted by parents who haven't had an application determined for last school term, last school year, never mind this school year. So we're running currently a year behind, and the sooner that is addressed, I think, the better. And it's in the interest of the pupils rather than the members of the committee here.
Well, on that basis, I would suggest that we would recommend to the Chair of Full Council that he takes it as a matter of urgent business. Obviously, it will be in his gift to decide whether that's the case or not. And if not, we will refer it to the June Full Council meeting with the recommendation that the 8 members are formed from the 4 ward members of the 2 wards overseeing that trust historically. If the committee agrees to that. Yes.
Grateful to the committee for that, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gillian. We'll get there eventually. Sorry, I'm just waiting for some officers to come in for the next report. Okay, moving on to item 5, Dalbeattie Learning Campus, report by Director of Education Services. We have Rachel Craig here to answer any questions on the report. I personally feel that it's been a really good exercise. We've reached a really positive point now, and moving forward, the community does seem to be very signed up to it. Rachel, do you have anything further to add to the report?
Just to add that I think this is a good news story from which the whole Dalbeattie community will benefit. Since 2009, Dumfries and Galloway have actually completed 14 new schools. This will be number 16 after the completion of Langham Primary in 2014.
Thank you. Vice Chair?
Thank you, Chairman. Warmly welcome the report. It feels as though we have been doing this for quite some time. And very grateful to Rachel and her colleagues for the effort that they've put in over quite a long time. I noted, and I think Councillor Stitt might agree, but maybe some surprise in terms of the HMIE references to local awareness, because I think there was probably a point at which he and I couldn't walk down the street without the schools and possible proposals and the shape of the proposals being the main topic of conversation. But I do recognise that there's been a wee bit of time that has elapsed since the initial announcements and work first started on it. I just want to raise 2 things very briefly. The first being, of course, in line with what I'd said at previous meetings about this in relation to St Peter's. The parent body at St Peter's took a decision which we honour and respect. I certainly am keen to see us maintain for as long as possible the position that the door is open to accommodating St Peter's or denominational education within the campus. I recognise that there will come a point when we have to have designs, we have to agree designs, and they must be completed. We're clearly not at that point yet. I would like to see the door left open to that, I think, at this point. I think that's very important. The other point that I wanted to raise was, I suppose, following from the first, that of communication. And from my point of view, and particularly given what HMIE have said, I would like to see us erring on the side of too much rather than too little. If people are approaching Councillor Stitt and I in the street saying, would you please now be quiet about the school, we think we know what's going on, I would much rather that was the situation than people asking, where have we got to, where are we at? I do think that, particularly in the next couple of phases we've got of this, lots and lots of communication with the parents and the community is going to be absolutely crucial. But it is a very good news story. I'm delighted that we're making progress and very grateful for all the effort that's been put in so far.
Would you like to comment?
Yes, as far as St Peter's concerned, the door is open. We are in communication with the church regarding this matter and with the parent body at St Peter's Primary School. The fact that we might move St Peter's into the new campus will have not a significant impact on the actual status of the building or the accommodation in the building, but certainly we would like to keep the door open for that to happen in the future. As far as communication is concerned, we are meeting regularly with the parent councils. We're now having joint parent council meetings in Dalbeattie. We've got a project board set up and also a project team, and the next meeting of the parent councils will be following the summer break. We'll be able to give them an update on actually what's happening, rather than meeting too regularly and not giving them any information at all. So it's trying to temper that with frequency of meetings and making sure they are.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Stitt.
Thanks, Chair. I'd just like to reiterate what Councillor Davis said. I'll welcome this report, although for 2009 we've had the doubters from the start, and it's happy now to say that the parent council at the primary have came on board. But one thing they have reiterated to me, they want to keep their own identity when they go to the shared complex, which I quite agree with. I also agree with, I spoke to Father McFadden this morning, it's quite worrying the numbers at St Peter's School now, but no doubt we'll keep in touch with them through the Education Committee. Can also ask Rachel what the design lifespan for this school will be, because at present PPP is 30 years plus 10. What is the proposal for Dalbeattie?
It's very similar, it's about 30 years, 10. Obviously, by the end of the 30 years, they'd have to hand it over in the condition that we received it in, so make sure that it was up to standard.
Thank you. Reverend McFadden.
Thanks, Chair. Just to say thanks to the committee for keeping the possibilities open for the whole experience of St Peter's. I am in communication with the parent council of St Peter's and with the parents to try to make sure that they know what the possibilities are. And as Councillor has said, the numbers have decreased dramatically over the last year, with many parents already choosing to go into Dalbeattie Primary. So the very fact that we're keeping negotiations going, I hope we can continue to do that.
Absolutely. Do you have any other members? Councillor Lever.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think it's very welcome that we have built so many new schools in the region. It's reversed a lot of the decline in the educational establishment, if you like, over the past few years. What's the current combined role for the schools which will be going into the new campus, and what are the design capacities? Because we're already running into problems with the 2A schools and the PPP schools that very, very quickly they've reached maximum capacity. I know they've been designed so that they are flexible, so we can add on additional classrooms, but obviously, we need to make sure that we do have sufficient capacity for what we can see as being the number of pupils coming to this in the past. And Father McFadden mentioned the fact that the school roll at St Peter's has fallen dramatically. What is the current school roll of St Peter's? I mean, it's obviously a concern about the condition survey on St Peter's as well. If that's to remain open, then obviously we need to make sure it's in reasonable condition.
The roll in St Peter's after the summer break is down to 2 pupils, but it has had a lot of refurbishment done in the last 2 or 3 years to make sure it's wind and watertight. So that's the current situation as far as St Peter's is concerned. The anticipated capacity of the secondary school is about 700 pupils, and the primary school, the anticipated capacity is about 356. However, we have taken into account that there is new build in Dalbeattie, and we obviously have designed the school or have got schedules for the school to ensure that there are extra classrooms we can use. For example, there's a general purpose room, there's an art and creative room, drama, music room, and ICT suite, which we could actually call on if the role actually increased. So there should be adequate capacity in the new build.
Thank you for that. Do I have any other members? Mr McQuiston?
I just don't want to lose sight of the fact of the additional vocational options that are being made for the secondary sector. I think they are welcome, and I think they'll be an interesting experiment and be good to track that in coming years.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that, and it's a thing that we're looking at doing right across the region incredibly. Councillor Nicholl?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Could Rachel repeat those figures, please? And could she give me the school role in the secondary school at the moment?
School role in the secondary school at the moment, I think, is about 650, but we have a capacity of around 700 for the new school. But again, secondary schools are 80% capacity normally, because this is to do with the optimal figure we use for timetabling constraints. So schools are always at 80% full, so there's still capacity even with the 700 pupils. In this primary sector, the anticipated capacity for the new school is 356, 12 classes, 12 rooms in total.
Any other members? Okay, moving to the recommendations. As I say, I think it's been a very good piece of work, and I'd like to thank the officers for all their hard work. Particularly the appendix has given us a really clear overview of the work that's gone on and will continue to go on. Looking at the recommendations, are we happy to note 2.1 and 2.2? Good, thank you, members. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 6, School Meal Service Strategic Commission 2012 and 2013 Performance Report. We have Dr. Bryson and Alan Mawson here to answer any questions on the report. I'd just like to say by saying that this is an incredibly positive report, really good news story for once, and I'm absolutely delighted. I'd like to thank Kate and our team at DG First for their continued efforts in enhancing and increasing our pupil numbers who are taking school meals. And I appreciate that the quality of the meals in the schools is very high. And on the back of the horse meat scandal, we were able to assure parents across Dumfries and Galloway that our food is totally safe, it's made from scratch, nothing is brought in tubs and boxes from out with the authority. And I think that that assurance to parents is worth its weight in gold. So I thank you for that. Gillian and Alan, do you have anything further to add to the report?
And further, again, just to echo a very positive report, uptake in primary schools for 10 years, highest uptake in secondary in 7 years, and increasing. So thank you also to DG First for their continued support of our schools.
Members? Councillor Leader?
Yeah, it's good to see that not only are the numbers increasing, but compared to the comparator authorities as well, we're doing very well in terms of this. I'm just wondering, do we actually monitor waste from the kitchens? And do we adapt the menu accordingly in order to minimise them? There's a difference between people taking school meals and eating them, I know, as their fathers.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah. What I can say is we don't monitor the food off the plate that goes to waste at the moment. But what we do is the unit itself will monitor any waste as far as kitchen waste is concerned. What I would add to that is that obviously with the zero waste policy that's coming in over the next couple of years, we're going to need to look at putting something in place that will monitor the waste off the plate as well. Just to add a bit of value to that is obviously we would suggest that the kids our audit and inspection process that we have in place would indicate that most of the food is consumed off the plate, and we do give them a choice now rather than just lumping the vegetables onto the plate. we're minimalistic, put some on at the plate, but arguably we won't force it upon the child, so which has reduced the amount of waste we've got, which you can see in the amount of food cost provision that we've managed to tighten up on, that we've tightened up on that considerably through our pre-order system that we've got in place at the moment.
Thank you for that, Councillor Dempster, and then Councillor Witt.
Thanks, Chair. One or 2 points, if you like. On 351, it talks about continual financial pressure associated with the economic climate and the potential impact of welfare reform. That will be an issue, I'm absolutely sure, but it also will be an issue on clothing grants, because people that qualify for free school meals will also qualify for clothing grants, and that's something we'll have to address in the budget process, because there's nothing sure that will be an issue that we'll have to deal with. On the feedback from pupils and staff about the Dumfries school and the cafe thing, where it says pupils like being able to pay with cash, I thought all pupils were able to pay with cash. And if no, that's something we need to look at, because clearly it's an educational process anyway, paying with cash, and it's something you'd want to see kids involved in. So I would hope that that's just an observation and no something that's unique to some schools. On that, the report itself, I like the idea of the uptake. I like the idea that we're actually successful. And I wouldn't mind seeing a report on how individual school uptake is, in case we're highlighting what's a great success story in some schools and maybe a challenge in others, and we would be able to address it using best practice. And lastly, it's the location of snack vans, and it's not so much the location. I think it's great that we're experimenting and thinking out the box, if you like. But on 311, page 83, it talks about the snack vans being allowed to be used by DG First to react to needs of those affected by disruptive events, such as the snow in the last month. Well, where are these vans to be permanently located? And I don't mean at the school. I mean, I presume they'll be in council depots somewhere. And my reason for asking that question is there's not much point in them being kept in Dumfries if the snow falls in Stranraer and you can't get them there. And it brings into play then how you deal with health and safety and public health, because these are very item-specific vehicles. But I have an interest in where they're actually going to be kept and how they're going to be looked after when they're dormant, because it's good as well that we're looking to use council equipment, maybe initially purchased for the education department, that serves the whole community. That's best practice, and that's a great idea. It's just the practicality of it I'd be interested in.
Thank you for that, Councillor Dempster. I think the individual school data would be very useful, and I know that we've had that historically. We can maybe request that within the recommendations in the future report. Alan, would you want to answer these other questions?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. I'll pass on the closing grants. I'll let Gillian do that when I've done the school meals on, if that's okay. Yeah, observation, Dumfries Academy cash payments. All secondary schools do have the option to pay for cash. We've got put tills in, I think, 2 years ago there. I think what the pupils have noticed is just the new layout. It's a lot more simplistic for them, and the flow that we've put into place. So I think, yeah, absolutely, just confirm that is just an observation that they've picked up on. Individual uptake, that's not a problem. We do that on a weekly, monthly basis anyway, so we can get that to members, whatever route that the committee decides that they wish that to be presented. Location of the snack vans, picking up on that one. At the moment, there will be a rolling programme, but yep, we've looked at it strategically as far as the placing of these will be. There is one at Stranraer Academy at the moment. Sanker Academy, there's one position there, and the third one will be moving up to Annan Academy in the next 2 weeks. Out with that, the strategic vision of that for emergency responses, then places are picked at that moment in time to be able to react to the region, depending on another incident that happened in the weekend of the 22nd of March. But out with that period of time, they will be kept, they'll be moved to Cargan Towers and Commerce Road, so we've got at least one in the west and one in the east, as far as the logistics is concerned, to actually move them to an area that may need it as far as a community feeding in an emergency situation would be concerned. I think that covers all the points, Chair.
Lynn, would you like to?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Clothing grants are currently sitting at £80 per child, distributed annually, and this year we had the highest percentage, been increasing year on year, 1% year on year for the last 5 or 6 years, and it's now sitting at 15% of our school population on average. Clearly it varies quite dramatically from school to school, but on average 15% of our school population are eligible for free school meals and clothing grants, and it is the levels of application are.
Just before I bring Councillor Dempster back in, is this the budget pressure for the council, or are we reimbursed by the Department of Work and Pensions for free school meals and clothing grants? Is that I could do with clarification?
We are reimbursed for free school meals, clothing grants. Level of clothing grants was set by.
Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Chair. Just the location of these vans, if I can be absolutely clear, you're telling me that when they're not in use at the schools, they will be at Cargan Towers?
Chair, there'll be most likely there's 3 vans, 2 will be at Cargan Towers, 1 will be kept at the Roads Depot in Stranraer in the west as a minimum requirement to support the west in the event of an emergency.
It's for another day, Chair, but I don't see the sense in that, because if the snow falls and Sankerman are blocked in, there's no good if the van's at Cargan Bridge. But anyway, when we're doing, and it's a roll-out programme, there'll be one at each area, if you like, not necessarily each school, they should be obviously retained in that area, but I'll take it up at another time. Thanks for your indulgence.
Not a problem, thank you. Councillor Witts and then Councillor Brody.
Thank you, Chair. It's most gratifying to read in paragraphs 3.6 through to paragraph 3.9 about the success of the Dumfries Academy Cafe, and I was privileged to be there at the opening, and I got a sneak preview beforehand. I'm sure my eldest granddaughter, who's arriving in August at the Academy, will be delighted, but I'm sure it's accidental set up at the same time. Yes. However, I would be interested to see, like Councillor Dempster, the breakdown of figures. I mean, the head teacher of Academy says the uptake is very high since the development of the cafe, and I was wondering if, as is presumably proven that it has been very successful, whether we would consider similar schemes being rolled out in other secondary schools, the possibilities.
Yeah, I would entirely agree with that, and I think that the information from Dumfries Academy and from the new schools, new secondary schools, which have much nicer social areas and areas where kids want to sit at lunchtime once they've got their food, has shown an increase in uptake. And I think, as a committee, we need to look at the older schools, the secondary schools that haven't got those nicer social areas, and look at working towards improving that as well over the piece, within budget. So I would certainly agree with that. Councillor Brody and then Councillor McComb and Marshall.
Thanks, Chair. It's on the question of cash and cards. The use of cards in schools has helped to alleviate the stigmatism which goes with having free meals, because everybody's the same when they go to the till. The question about the school vans we are providing, how will pupils pay for their meals there, and what will be the arrangements for people with free meals? Will they be able to use their cards in the van?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, can give clear direction on that. Obviously, it's the same scenario at the vans. It'll be it's the same as in the canteen itself. We'll put a pre-order system in place for the morning break, so free meals can actually pre-order their lunch and pick them up at the van at lunchtime without any stigma of anonymity being breached. And the same for anybody that's paying by card, because we're obviously looking at expanding into online payments over the next couple of years as well. So they will be able to pay for their lunch at morning break and pick it up at the snack van if that's what the requirement is.
Thank you for that. Councillor McComb? Councillor Marshall?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I don't think we should underestimate, the positive kind of news within this report, and I think, particularly, you look at a 10% increase in the primary school over the last 4 years, but to actually increase from a quarter to half the secondary schools, it's due to kind of some of the things that we had to do with regard to DG First, to try and make it more attractive and to compete with, outside caterers that a lot of our pupils from secondary schools were going down the street to. So, I mean, things like DJ Cafe and healthy diets, etc., have actually improved that to, it's incredible that we've got to the stage of 50% now. There must also, though, be a positive impact, particularly in our towns, when we used to get criticism of the amount of people going down the street and littering, etc. So there must be a positive impact on that. And the final thing as well,
I think when we were actually talking about the service level agreements, etc., between delivery and commissioning, I think it is important to monitor it, particularly with the welfare reform, that any other increases, you're saying that you get, funding for free school meals, so we wouldn't expect to see, further increases coming in unless it was absolutely necessary throughout the year. And hopefully, I think the agreement is that it comes back to this committee.
The Commission was agreed with the understanding we had the opportunity to increase by 5 pence. Anything over and above that would have to come back.
Thank you for those points. Do I have any other members? Okay, moving to the recommendations. I think we've agreed that in a further update report, we would like to see a breakdown of individual schools. I think both primary and secondary would be very useful, and that would give us a greater sort of local picture. So if we could just sort of embed that within the recommendations as well. So moving to 2.1, agree the performance report, the school meals service for 2012-2013 as detailed in the appendices. We have to agree that. And at 2.2, note the completion of the Dumfries Academy kitchen dining facility. And we'll add a 2.3. What timeline would we like? 6 months? Yeah. 6 months be okay? Sorry?
Either 6 months or annually, Chair, because there's a summer and winter differential, isn't there? So probably 6 months would be useful.
Right. If we ask for 6 months, a report in 6 months which gives individual school data, and obviously we'll be by then as well. That would be very useful. Are members happy to agree that? Thank you both. Sorry, again, I'm just waiting for some officers to come in.
And just before we go to this report, at the November meeting, there was an agreement under 4.14.3 that obviously, when you've got the potential for reducing head teachers or over 30 head teachers over the next 3 years, it was agreed there would be a cost-benefit analysis of the savings that the council would generate from this. And there's nothing within the report to suggest. It does tell you how much it would cost if you were to actually take the schools with 100 pupils out of that. But part of the original agreement in November was to actually tell us how much savings these proposals are going to generate. And there's nothing in the report that actually states that.
We can maybe pick that up once we get into the body of the report. And now that we've got the officers here, that or the director certainly. Okay, moving on to item 7, the cluster working review. This has been a fairly comprehensive piece of professional review over the past couple of years. I know that Anne and her team have done an enormous amount of work on this behind the scenes and in consultation with all of the schools involved, and I'd like to thank them for their efforts at continuing to liaise with the schools and the head teachers and the parent councils. And I know that that will be an ongoing process even from here on in. We have Anne Campbell here and Martin Armstrong, who's the head teacher of Nethermill, if I'm correct, yes, who's been involved in the review as well. And they're here to answer any questions from members. Do you have anything further to add to the report, or is there anything that you would like to highlight before I open the floor?
Thank you very much. Just that the members of the Cluster Working Review has been a long process that has been through a number of changes due to consultations. However, what you have in front of you has something positive for everybody in the recommendations. Learners get consistency of learning and teaching with no more head teacher management time, which was a parent's top priority, and they get to retain their own school and identity. Leaders get time to build staff capacity to meet the needs of all children and direct the curriculum to nurture confident and successful young people. This allows the service to put in place a succession management plan to cope with imminent retirements and to support leaders of the future. And most importantly, young people get access to a broad curriculum with a wide range of staff and peers that will build their confidence and skills to meet the challenges of a fast-paced change. Currently, class committed head teachers in all schools up to 150 pupils spend 60% of their week as a class teacher and away from leadership. The cluster working review will refocus their responsibilities on strategic tasks which will help improve outcomes for all young people through building skills and confidence in staff. What I would like to do is to introduce my colleague, Martin Armstrong, who's the head teacher at Nethermill Primary School and was part of the cluster working review subgroup.
Or is there maybe not a guest card in that one?
Thank you. Yes, I'm a substantive head teacher of a small primary school, and I've been involved in the subgroup of the Performance and Quality Strategy Group, looking at the cluster working review. That group, I would like to point out, consists of up to 16 members, 9 of whom are actually head teachers of small primary schools. For me, the biggest concern is about the consistency of learning for children. For example, in my current role, I teach for 3 days a week and carry out my head teacher responsibilities on 2 days a week. So the children are already subject to 2 different teachers within any given week. Second to that, I would also like to add that on the days when I am in class, I can't recall the last time when I actually did teach for 3 days. For one reason or another, I have to leave the class at least 1 day of every week, and on many occasions 2 days a week, meaning that their children actually are then working with a supply teacher on just about a weekly basis. So the biggest impact of this will be, for me, that if this is taken through, that the children will actually have a consistent person in front of them every single day of the week.
Thank you very much for that. I have Councillor Brodie.
Thanks, Chair. I would just like to welcome the parents of Brightcock here. It's good to see them exercising their democratic right to make their views known. Obviously, I've spoken to the parents from Brightcock, and they're obviously very happy with the situation at their small primary school at the moment. They've got a great relationship between the teachers, the head teacher and the children, and they would like that to continue. So if we're going to proceed on the cluster working, then I think we have got to take these parents on board and look at the relationship between Elmvale and Brightcock School. So I think that's something we must take forward and continue the dialogue and look at how we can take that forward. Now, one of the concerns which was raised in consultation with head teachers was that the amount of time which head teachers spend in the classroom, which doesn't allow them to lead the schools and work effectively. And that's one of the things we're trying to address in this cluster working review. So I think that there may be there's going to be a period of a 3-year phase-in. I think that we should be doing something to support these schools in the meantime until the cluster working review comes in. And I would think we should look at finding an extra day's cover for head teachers until this arrangement comes in, because we have identified this problem and we should try and do something about it. Perhaps Ms. Campbell can tell us what the cost would that be. I calculate that to be around £30,000, which could be accommodated within the savings which are identified in the paper. But the 2 points I'd like to make is the dialogue has got to continue with schools like Brightcock and Elmvale, where there are problems. I don't think we can agree fully to that unless we get an assurance that we are going to work with these schools and the parents there to get a way forward, and that we should be doing something in the interim to support the schools where head teachers have got high workload, and we're not going to do anything about it for the next 3 years.
I'll bring the director in, and then Anne can answer any technical questions.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Maybe just pick up 2 or 3 things that are all connected there. I would also very much welcome parents I already have done from Brightcock today. As far as budget, Councillor Marshall's question, in Section 4 implementation, it highlights the fact that the overall, I mean, we've got a big grid that's been agreed by the finance officers, but the overall implementation costs in reaching the stage that we wish to reach will end up in an outcome which sees a £46,000 saving overall, which is broadly cost neutral in terms of the whole big picture. What we'd be looking to do with that 46,000 is reinvest it, but that's only once, that's 3 years down the line. So basically the model of staffing at the end of the process, when everybody's in place, would see our schools operating at a cost of 46,000 right across the board less, which is minimal, it's cost neutral, and that was what it was designed to do. Related to that then, the issue about supporting schools through the phasing, through extra management days, it would be a challenge because that would really relate to every school we have in the authority to an extent. The council took a decision last year, I think, to reduce management days due to challenging fiscal climate. And really within the budget, we don't currently have the facility to reintroduce that without the members agreeing that. But I think the key issue there is that we phase over 3 years, but really where opportunities arise quicker to take that burden off people, we try to do it. The third point is about continuing dialogue with members of the public, and particularly parents. You're right to say that dialogue needs to continue. Today's paper is not about specific partnerships, of course, and it doesn't lie within the recommendations. However, we recognise that probably 95% of the schools involved are now happy with the pairings that they've got. There are a small number, particularly over in the Annan area, where that might not be the case. And I think we do have to give a reassurance and commitment that we will continue that dialogue with parents to try to achieve a position that where everybody's happy. That might not be possible, but I think we'd be committed to coming back quite regularly with reports on how this is being implemented and the phasing agenda, and we'd look to come back with a report on any progress we've been able to make there.
Thank you for that clarification. Anna, is there any points you'd like to pick up on?
Just to say, I did respond to Councillor Brody this morning, and it's right, it's about £33,000 per annum to have one additional management day attached for schools. And just to say that in terms of the cost analysis, it has been completed by finance officers, but obviously it holds personal information about salary scales for head teachers, and therefore we couldn't make that public.
No, I appreciate that. I have Councillor Wiper and then Councillor Marshall and Lever. Councillor Marshall.
I think it's important, rather than just have a paragraph saying it's cost neutral, I think members are entitled to actually see the workings behind that. It shouldn't be made available to the public, but certainly members in competence should be given that detail behind this, so that we can actually scrutinise, the cost neutral basis for this going ahead.
Clearly, we'll check that through whether there is any confidentiality of individual salaries, but there's no difficulty with that. We have a grid with every single pairing, what the posts are, what the costs are. Finance, through Mr. Garrett, has agreed that the total cost comes out at 46,000. But I don't think there's any difficulty in giving you that. It's whether it would have appeared in a public.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Councillor Wiper.
Thank you, Chair. It's just some clarification for myself and possibly for parents out there that I think there's a lot of fear that children are going to spend time travelling between the schools in the cluster, and that children are going to be coming from Bridekirk to Elmdale into a bigger school and find that foreign to them. I think that needs to be reassured to them that's not going to be what's happening. And I can't really see anything negative in children having the same teacher every day of the week, other than the head teacher being there for a couple of days and then another teacher coming in. Surely it's going to be actually better for your children if you have the same teacher 5 days a week and the head is then left to get on with the running of the school unhindered. I mean, that's got to be better for the children. There's something else here, just an observation. Up until a couple of weeks ago, just about every day, I get emails from Gatehouse of Fleet, Parent Council and individual parents. Same fears that Bridekirk have got there, until the head teacher actually came out in favour of the cluster review. And then these emails just stopped. I think the head teachers need to come out and make their position clear. And as we're being told, 95% of head teachers are in favour of this. but they're not communicating that to their parent councils. I think if they communicate that to their parent councils, the same as what happened in Gatehouse of Fleet, the fears will maybe not disappear, but they'll be alleviated a lot.
I think that's a very good point. And before I bring Martin in to cover the points that you've asked, this has already been rolled out in the borders, and anecdotally, the head teachers that are now in much larger clusters, up to as much as I think 360, have all, without exception, said they would never go back to the old way of working. They've really seen the benefits of it. So I think the points that you've made are very, very valid. Martin, do you want to pick up on?
Yeah, just with the first point about travelling time, I don't anticipate that on a day-to-day basis, the learning and teaching will be any different for the children. There won't be a regular, every Friday they go to this school or vice versa. For the vast majority of the time, the children will be educated in the same school where they are now, with the exception of where it might be of a benefit to the children to bring them together, which will be up to the head teacher to determine that. I think the other thing we need to consider is about, going back to a point made earlier by Councillor Brodie about relationships and so on. I'm fully supportive of that, and the relationships in my school I consider to be excellent as well. But the other factor to bring into this is around succession management and the fact that we really struggle to appoint head teachers to small schools these days. My own case in point, when I was appointed 5 years ago, it was the third round of interviews. And we really struggle. And what happens then is that we're having to partner schools on an ad hoc basis. And clearly, a strategic way forward is far better than doing it on an ad hoc basis.
Thank you for that contribution. Councillor Marshall, did you want back in again? Or okay. Councillor Lever and then Councillor Gilroy.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very pleased that this report's come back to the committee, and I know it was a major concern at the meeting in November that the consultation process, although it had been carried out, hadn't been carried out properly. You know, as usual, we've rushed into this. And looking back through some of the appendices to this, some of these meetings were very poorly attended. I think some of them had 2 people there, others had 3, etc. And I'm concerned that this is in part because parents thought, well, this is a done deal anyway, it's going to go ahead. And I think we need to take this on board, that when we go out to consultation, we should go out at the start of the process rather than at the end of the process where we have made decisions, even if they're in principle. People still think, well, that's going to be what the decision is going to be, therefore, why should I bother turning out to a meeting? As has been said, I mean, we've received quite a number of emails from various schools who aren't happy with the results of the clustering review, and in particular, those which are quite large schools anyway, with over 100 pupils. They feel that they're going to lose out in this process. And I note in 3.1, it says, as a result of the Education Committee's November in-principle decision to create non-class committed head teachers in all schools with a pupil roll of 150 or fewer, there's no mention of 150 in the recommendations which came out of the November meeting of the Education. So I'm a bit concerned about where this figure of 150 comes from. I've got a copy of the minutes here in front of me, and that certainly isn't amongst the recommendations, is that we set the target at 150. And as I said, we've received quite a lot of correspondence against the idea of setting it at 150. I know figures are given in this paper as to the cost of reducing the threshold to 100. These figures might be correct. They may not be correct. I don't know the situation. I think we need to go into this in more detail. But I would personally, the Labour Group's view is that we should reduce this figure to an option of 100 rather than a 150 threshold. And we would be moving a recommendation, a revised recommendation to that effect when we come to the recommendations itself. Just looking at the cluster, I sadly not only read through the minutes of the education paper in 13th of November, we also listened to the recording again. And I think to a large extent, a lot of us on this committee weren't aware of what we were committing ourselves to and the background. Programme Office was raised at that meeting because there was a lot of information in Programme Office. Now, nobody on the committee knew what Programme Office was. Officials did, councillors didn't. And one of the commitments in the minutes is that the link to programme officer would be distributed to all members. I don't think that took place either. I've asked my colleagues in the Labour group, nobody remembers getting that, so we couldn't go back and interrogate the papers within that. It's obvious from other correspondence we've received that although I can say here, a lot of advantages in terms of clustering has been demonstrated, I think it's mainly small schools who can benefit from this, and I think we do need to be more flexible. Duncow Primary, for example, they're 15-1 of their pupils in the past have all gone up to Thornhill, to Wallace Hall, and they're very, very keen that should continue. So I've had representations from individual parents, the parent council, the community council, all of whom want this to continue. They want to go to Wallace Hall Academy rather than the high school. The distance is a very small difference between them. I think it's 4.8 miles from the high school, which which it's proposed to actually feed into, as opposed to around about 7 from Wallace Hall. And I think the purpose of consultation and parental choice is if this community want to go to Wallace Hall in future, we should have the flexibility within the system that they can continue to do so. So I would like a commitment to that as well, that we need to review that. I know the chair of the parent council got a email from the directors dated the 19th of May, saying that they were meeting with the head teachers of Wallace Hall cluster schools in Duncow Primary to consider this issue. I hope that meeting has taken place and we do revise that and continue to say, a feed of Wallace Hall Academy. That's what the local people want. There's a great fear that if they go ahead with feeding into the high school, that'll be the end of Duncow Primary School. You know, parents will vote with their feet and shift the children elsewhere. If I would like a commitment with regard to that.
Thank you very much for your contributions. Lots of points to pick up in there. I'll pass the director for the 150 and the Duncow issue, and then Anne can maybe pick up.
Yeah, I'll pick up on the ones that I can. Whether or not it said 150 in the previous report is de facto 150 because it was about removing the position of class committed head teachers, and class committed head teachers fall at the threshold of 150. So if we didn't actually put the figure in, I apologise, that's where class committed head teachers fall at a ratio of 150 in our schools. The second issue is to recognise how importantly and seriously we took the questions around the 150, because a number of people, parent councils, MSPs, local members, etc., wrote in to ask us to look at that one again. We did look at that one, and that's why we've made it the first noted recommendation. We looked really carefully, we put it back to the group, which again consists of a wide range of people, to consider could we leave out those between 100 and 150. The considered view of that group was it would be the wrong thing to do, because the same issues would arise in that a head teacher in Gatehouse would be teaching 2 or 3 days a week, whilst trying to run a school of 100, 140, say, and we were trying, the same principles were arising. In addition to that, we looked at whether, therefore, there was another way around that, and you could make them non-class committed without pairing, and what the cost would be. And as you can see in section 3.13 and 3.14, the cost would range between £100,000 and £250,000 per annum, and really on the basis of the combination of our concerns around both of those issues, that was why, after serious consideration, we recommended that we retain the schools up to 150 within the project. The third issue about Duncow and some other schools that have questioned about where they've ended up zoned is really out with this report, of course. However, what again I would like to do is give the same sort of reassurance that I've given around Bridekirk, that be continuing dialogue around that issue. We've already said in the previous report in November, my apologies, that all of the parents at Duncow who are currently there, or even wee brothers and sisters that are still to come, would continue to be dual zoned to Wallace Hall, and would continue, if that was the current position, they would continue to get free transport, etc., and that it would be a phasing out issue over a long period of time. However, the question there is whether in the longer term Duncow is in the right catchment, and there's an opportunity to re-examine any anomalous positions like that in the catchment review, which takes place from 2014. The last thing I would say in that is that my understanding is that a meeting did take place between all the head teachers from Wallace Hall Cluster and the head teacher from Duncow, and it was the collective view in there that there shouldn't be a revision, and I think that was sent out. But again, I can clarify that for you.
Yes, just to say that in terms of the original report and programme office, we were advised by governance that we had to put everything in the programme office to limit the number of papers that were printed. And we had 23 background papers in that, in addition to the 17 that are here. With relation to Duncow, we met with all of the head teachers, bar one, in that whole area, and discussed round all of the issues, and kept coming back to this is about the benefit of all children, and it's about creating a situation that's going to be attractive for head teachers in the future. And the collective view was very much that we should retain the status and that Duncow should remain at the minute with Dumfries High School. However, as Colin has said, that there's a possibility for that to be looked at in catchment review. But in addition, this does not take away parental right to go to Wallace Hall. Parents can send their children wherever, regardless of where we align them to. So we're not taking away parental right to go to Wallace Hall.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hoover.
Just come back on a couple of issues. Programme office, yes, I appreciate why the information was put on Programme office, but what didn't happen wasn't the link wasn't actually sent out to members to enable them to access the papers which had been put into Programme office. So I appreciate there's a lot of background information. I don't think, we would just end up padding the report anyway, but I think we needed to have the link sent out, which didn't happen. In terms of Duncow and the other schools, I'm reluctant to agree these clusters as they are, because we could accidentally agree to set this in stone effectively, and then come back to look at this again and say, well, no, you agreed to do that at the Education Committee in May. So that's where my reluctance is to make any sort of commitment in terms of that. And I do reiterate my concerns being expressed by the parents and the Parent Council that this could seriously jeopardise a school like Duncow, whose role's falling already. And that's the last thing we want to do in an area such as that, where it does form such an important part of the local community.
Just again for clarity, the removal of the dual zoning to single zoning to the schools to their nearest geographical secondary, that decision was actually taken in November, and it's done. However, we do recognise that. I'm not certain that all of the councillors recognised the implication of that at the time, and that's why what we've said is that all of the current pupils and their siblings would have the same rights for as long as they're in the school system, which is not only the right to go to the school, they actually would get free transport. However, if it's about the long-term catchment issue, then we would want to look at that in any anomalous situations in the 2014 review of catchments where there are these anomalous situations. It's only as a further piece of background that we're just to let you know of the varied opinions that there are, that when we did hold a meeting of all the head teachers there, the collective view was that we should remain where we are. However, we'll have a look at that in 2014, but it doesn't affect the rights of any current parents.
And it doesn't affect the cluster review either. It's a completely Councillor Gilroy, and then Councillor Witts, and Councillor McCall.
Thank you, and I do welcome this report, and I have to congratulate the staff who put their work into this, because it's been a long, drawn out, but I think we're here with good recommendations, and I hope we can take it forward today to full council on Thursday. What came up when I was at one or two of my school boards, and I have both a big school as in Gatehouse, but there were two small village schools of Twynham and Borg, and it was the smaller schools that brought up the slight concern with regard to the appointment of principal teacher. And because at the moment they do have input into their head teacher appointment, and they're losing their head teacher as such that's there, they're going to start sharing. So the principal teacher is going to be really important, and they're not going to have at this moment, by what I'm looking at in the way that of the recruitment of principal teachers, they are not part of that recruitment process. And I just wonder if that's wise, because we do want the school councils to feel part of all this thing. It's important that they do have a say in who they have in their school, and I just wonder if we could incorporate something within the recommendation. Perhaps we look at that.
I would entirely agree with that, and I think when we move to the recommendations, if it's feasible, we should look at ensuring that a parent council member is involved in the interview process. Maybe on a ratio basis, I think we have 3 for head teachers, 2 for deputies, possibly 1 for a principal teacher would be very useful if that's feasible.
Just to see that in response to concern about parent council members not being involved in the matching process, we produced the paper that talks about how parent council members will be involved in the process so that they don't feel that they're being excluded. It's simply that within the Parental Involvement Act there is a clause that removes parental involvement from any matching process because we have a duty of care to our substantive teachers. But there is a possibility that we can relook at the principal teacher appointments. That's not an issue at all. I'm sure that we would welcome the opportunity at some level in the process.
I wonder if I could add something there, Chair, just to also remember that once we've gone through the phasing position and reach a stage where all appointments are made, after that point, we would anticipate that every new post that's ever recruited for will have parental involvement. Right. Okay. Okay. So there's only not parental involvement in the recruitment when we're redeploying, and what we're saying is that the redeployment period will only be as we move from a larger number of head teachers to fewer. Once that's phased in fully, we get back to where we were previously, and you would anticipate a head who's appointed between 2 clusters to be joint parent council to make that appointment. The other thing about the principal teacher involvement, we just need to be careful about the fact that we have recently agreed through LNCT agreements for recruitment of principal teachers, deputies and heads, and at the moment there wouldn't be parental involvement in a principal teacher recruitment. However, we can revisit that with LNCT to ask that we include parental involvement where it relates to clustered schools. I don't think that would be a major problem.
Chair, just to come back, that wasn't made clear in the report here that we just done. So I think that's maybe where the school councils have thought they were being ruled out forever. And I think if we could put something like that in the recommendation, that would be really
nice. Okay, I've got quite a few speakers. I have Councillor Witts, then Councillor McComb and Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Chair. I too welcome the report, and I do appreciate the hard work that's gone into it. It's excellent. I'm one of the few people here that think can speak with some authority regarding the situation as I was formerly a teacher of a small school. And it was hard graft then, some decades ago, and you had to give up your evenings. Now it looks like you have to give up your weekends as well. I dare say Mr. Armstrong could tell me more about that. We have a problem which has to be fixed. The role of head teacher has changed dramatically, and we need to have a new way of working. So from that point of view, I mean, it's quite obvious that there is a problem. Basically, you can't get the staff, as they say. You can see that from the number of people coming forward. We have a surfeit of teachers, and yet the people who want to take on the role of head teacher, teaching head of a small school, is diminishing. And as Mr. Armstrong said, you often have to have 2 or 3 or even more rounds of interviews before you can get anybody coming forward. It's just so obviously people are wanting to look at a different way of doing it. I was in charge of a school which closed, and I think at the time it shouldn't have, but because they didn't look at all the parameters as they do nowadays, I do believe there should be a presumption against closure. So from that point of view, it's a matter close to my heart, and I wouldn't support any proposal that went forward if I thought it meant that the rural schools in Dumfries and Galloway were going to be decimated. So from that point of view, if I say that I think it preserves these schools, sustains them, gives them stability, I hope that what I'm saying has some resonance. I think it does bring stability. People have said, oh, it may have been the death knell of this school if we no longer have a head teacher in situ, that we're sharing a head. But what I have heard from other sources, from parents, is that when you do not when you have a head teacher, a teaching head that's in and out like the tide, Solway, that's not there half the time, this is a very destabilising situation. It's not what young children need. They need some more stability. So I think the converse is true, that this proposal will actually bring the stability that these schools with teaching aides don't at the moment.
Thank you for that. Councillor McComb, Councillor Nicholson, and then Mr Burrell.
Thank you, Chair. I would welcome the proposals insofar as they make the head teacher post a more attractive and manageable job. I would also welcome it insofar as it provides greater continuity for the children in the classroom. However, I do have some issues with regard to the principal teacher post. Councillor Gilroy earlier highlighted the need for the parent councils to have a role in the appointment of these principal teachers. And I would certainly agree with that. If you look at page 206 and 207, the job description for the principal teacher, I am in no doubt that whilst we may call them principal teachers, they, from time to time, will be performing the function of deputies. And it is very clear from the top of page 206 that that is the case. Now, if principal teachers are doing this job, I think a realistic interpretation of the workload has got to be taken. That there is a danger that in solving the problem of the head teachers, you may simply transfer it to the newly appointed principal teachers. They will be teaching throughout the week, but yet they have this fairly substantial workload to perform as well. And I think it's vital that the last part of the job description be adhered to, namely that all duties must be capable of being undertaken within contractual time. That a realistic understanding of that has got to be achieved. And I certainly hope that that would be borne in mind as we proceed, or presumably proceed with these proposals.
Thank you very much for that. Pick up on any of those points, Anne?
Yes, thank you. Just to see that what's laid out here was identified by the head teacher on the subgroup, and these duties actually are the duties of a teacher at the minute when a head teacher is out of school for a remuneration. This is identifying a more senior post and remunerated accordingly to try to manage that process more appropriately. So basically, that at the minute it's a teacher that's performing.
I think, Chair, it is essential that a realistic interpretation of these duties be used. Otherwise, you may find in the future that you have a shortage of people coming forward for the principal teacher posts.
I think the point on board, and we certainly continue to support principal teachers and the cluster head should be proceeded. I have Councillor Nicholson and then Mr Burrell, Councillor Dempster, Councillor McClung, and more continuing after that.
Thank you, Chair. It's apparent to me that this isn't a one solution that fits all. Just picking up on Councillor McComb's point as well, regarding the principal teacher. I did have a question on, how the post principal teacher will work in practical terms. Say, for example, you've got an entitlement to say 1.5 principal teachers. Are you going to have half a principal teacher in some schools, and will principal teachers cut across more than one school as well? It's not very clear in the report. Wouldn't it be difficult to fill the half principal teacher post? Talking about filling posts and that. On I was going to take these over the committee timetable, but I can see that there's a lot of business to come, so I'll give you them all just now. The figure of 150 is being used, although that wasn't mentioned in the November report about 150. When was the figure 150 introduced as a level at which head teachers don't have timetable class time? And what was the criteria used to determine that figure? And what analysis has been done by the department to determine whether a figure 150 for a single school was appropriate to use when you're actually combining the schools? So that's like 3 questions in one. Councillor Lever mentioned earlier on about the consultation, and part of it was meaningless. I mean, if you've actually looked at the consultation, the report's actually padded out. It tells you things about, you know, what people thought about the presentations and the way it was done, and whether they liked the coffee, whether they liked a cup of coffee or not. You know, to me, that is the important part. It's not actually listening to the parents. How are we supposed to determine, you know, what the actual parents want, whether the parents are actually in support of the concept of cluster working, and whether these are parents' preferred clusters that's actually in the report, and whether there are alternative possibilities. As the report obviously just gives us the one option, a take it or leave it option. These are kind of key questions that we do need answers to, not whether people like the slideshow or not. Can I just say, before the full council, can we have a list of all the alternative options parents may have put forward in some of the areas? I think that's important if we're going forward the full council, to have that information there. Taking each of the clusters one at a time, how do you know whether each one actually has the support of the parents? If you want to go through the clusters one at a time, and you can tell me, you know, whether the parents actually support each one of these clusters, you know, I think that's important information that we need as well. And if you don't have that information now, I think I think that should go to full council as well, on a one-by-one basis. I don't have too much else to say. Just what consultation has taken place with the ward members in line with this, the new officer member protocol. It now makes it clear that ward members must be consulted in any major developments within their area. When was that done? Has it been done? Or when will it be done?
Can pick up on a couple of things there. Certainly in terms of ward members, I think Anne could probably intimate how many ward members have come to the meeting. Certainly everybody was invited to all of them. There's been a lot of meetings, and the cluster working reviews have been to all area committees to try and make sure it's been a localised discussion. Secondly, the flexibility around the principal teachers, I think, is there. I mean, what we're looking for is the head teachers to look quite carefully and closely about how best to deploy the principal teachers that they have in place. Do always remember, and I think it's a good point you've made about principal teachers, but do remember that the difference is they will have a head teacher who can be contacted and come on board if there are major issues, and certainly strategic issues to be dealt with. The level of consultation is as it is, and is as you see. We're certainly not going to be able to go back out between now and Thursday and produce further details about questions that weren't asked. It was a professional review that took place with a number of professional staff. Consultation, as you know, is about going out and letting people know what you're planning to do and talk to them about it and hear their views. We, at no stage in the consultation, certainly in the first stage, were absolutely specific, because what we were trying to do was get a feel from parents and from people out there what the key issues were about the challenges that are around. We've got a duty as an education department, I think you probably have as an education committee, to look at the holistic big picture, and what and it sometimes can be quite difficult when you're a teacher in your own school, or indeed a parent in your own school where you're happy, to see what the big issues are right across the council. And what we've tried to do is take major strategic decisions and put them 2 years options. The options that were put forward the last time led to the agreement in principle, and we've brought back to this committee exactly what we were asked to do, as you'll see from the wording under the purpose of the report. That's what we're asked to do, and that's what we've done. What we have done, though, is try to highlight the fact that we look quite closely at the numbers around 150 to 100, because the information that you have there would allow members to look at other options.
Thank you. Anne, do you have anything further to add?
Just to say that we lettered all ward members with the full schedule of meetings with 64 schools involved, and we held 24 meetings. A letter went into every school bag of every child, of every school that was involved. And in terms of principal teachers, we're clearly working through the process at the minute with the people who are already partnered and who already have place. And what those head teachers say, that the big thing, big benefit for them is that they can be where they need to be when they need to be there. And that's crucial for head teachers and a crucial difference from being a class committee.
Thank you. I've got a lot of speakers on the back of that. Okay.
Yeah, because one of the questions doesn't mean, well, the first three questions was answered in 150 pupils, and how it was, you know, the criteria used to determine that figure, what analysis was done by the department to determine that figure when it was actually done, and whether it's appropriate to use that figure in the combining the schools. I think the other thing is that, you know, on the consultation, I don't want to know, and if I didn't make that clear, I apologise. I don't want to know how the parents thought about slideshows or how they thought about a cup of coffee. I don't want to know that. What I want to know is what they think, and that's what a consultation for me is about, to get feedback from parents about what they actually think about the clusters, about what they actually think about, you know, what other alternatives they put forward. That's the kind of thing I want, to see if it's viable, to see if we can work within that criteria, not about a cup of coffee, not about a slideshow, not about the process.
You're just repeating yourself. Can you get to your point, please?
Well, that is one of the points. So I think it is important that we do that, and I haven't had any answers from that. I've had no answers from, you know, the other one as well. With the consultation with ward members, that is a consultation that's provided with the ward members, not in a consultation with anybody else. You know, that is that is with the ward members, and that's the consultation that I was talking about as well. But obviously, I'm not going to get answers here. Maybe get a full council.
I'll briefly bring the director in on the 150. I think that's an issue that we need to nail down at this particular point, and then we'll move on to. I still have 6 first-time speakers and 2 second speakers.
The time at which the 150 was decided, I believe, was well before my time, but I will make sure that I've got the information on that before full council. That's a long-standing arrangement. Clearly, were you to move the threshold, that would involve, if you move it down the way, that will involve quite significant additional budget. If you want to put that in, if you want to put it above 150, that would reduce the budget for council. But what I'll do is make sure that we know before full council and get that information to you. I simply don't know what date that was first put in place.
As well as appropriateness of using that figure for a cluster of schools, whereas it was the 150 for the one school. That's, you know, and I know it's past 10 years, and I don't understand why you don't know that information, because you've used that as a criteria. I don't know, you know, why you're actually using that without knowing what the criteria was for using it.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. I'll maybe bring in some other speakers, because I think we're going to get to a point where we're going to have a number of questions that need answers. So if I maybe bring in the other speakers, get their points, and then you could answer them all sort of in one go rather than back and forwarding. I think that might be more useful. I have Mr. Birrell, then Councillor Dempster and Councillor McClung.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, first of all, say that my colleague Elaine Dennis, representing the primary teachers, was very disappointed that she couldn't be here today, but the head teacher in her school is ill, and it simply, for administrative reasons, was impossible for her to get out of school to be here today. I have to thank the department. I know, having spoken at this fairly vehemently, I think, at our November meeting about the nature of consultation, I have to accept on the basis of the papers here. I'm happy to accept that a considerable amount of consultation has been undertaken since that time. I think while certainly a as far as teachers' organisations are concerned, the basic principle of having a school with its own autonomy, if you like, with its own head teachers, is something that we do believe in. We do accept the reality of the situation on the ground, and there are administrative and particularly financial difficulties that would lie in the way of making the job of a teaching head teacher in a small primary school as attractive and manageable as might be necessary to make it in coming years attract interest from young and ambitious staff, the kind of staff you'd wish to be running a school like that. We're very much of the view that if cluster management is adopted, that the phased implementation approach is definitely the better one. There are, as various points in the paper note, considerable number of specific employee relations and conditions of service issues for the staff involved that need to be discussed at the LNCT, and anything other than a phased implementation would make that in practical terms very difficult. I do think that sensitive attention has to be paid to the wishes of the parent body, particularly in those areas where there is unease or unhappiness with what are the present proposed clustering linkages. But I do have to agree with the director that it is obviously his job and the job of the education department, and obviously of elected members, to have regard to what is best for the educational service across the entire authority. And in order to achieve that, it may not, and is very unlikely in fact, to be possible to meet the legitimate particular wishes of everybody for their own school and community. I think as far as I have to say, finished, I do have to say that I did say in November that I felt that the dual zoning question was introducing unnecessary difficulties or would be in areas where long-standing dual zoning arrangements had existed and were working perfectly satisfactorily. But it was the view of this committee to withdraw those arrangements. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for your contribution. I have Councillor Dempster, Councillor McClung, and then Councillor Yin, Tate, and Vice Chair, and then we'll move on to Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Chair. Just one or two observations. If you look at Appendix 8, where it talks about parental consultation, evaluation, feedback in Nithsdale, we had 2 events in Wallace Hall Academy, and one parent turned up. And there's something wrong there. And one of the things that's wrong is it's a huge catchment area with very, very poor public transport. And I think it was a very, very poor choice of venue. And I don't know how you resolve that, but for me, it's not a satisfactory conclusion to a public consultation exercise when we manage to encourage one member of the public. And I attend these schools, and it's not that parents have no enthusiasm for the future of their children. There's something wrong with our process when that's the best we can do. And I find that particularly disappointing. The other thing I want to make an observation on, and the director will be pleased to hear that it's not his fault, but we agreed to build a new school in Thornhill Wallace Hall. We built it to take extraterrestrial pupils. The size of that school is not in territorial, sorry. Maybe some of them are extraterrestrial and you just don't know.
I've made that mistake before as well. I'm very careful now.
I'll try and no use any more big words. But to the serious point, we built that to take dual zone pupils. That's what we did. We made a conscious choice. We've entered into a PPP arrangement for 30 years for a huge school. Now we're talking seriously about saying to kids out with the catchment area, you can't go there. That's nonsense. And that's something I know the director has said we're going to look at it. And that's fine, because we need to. That's maybe unique, but it's a choice that we as an education committee made. And the other thing it's about, maybe another day too, but about Duncow, there are a raft of opportunities. We have here on the A3 page the proposed a cluster, if you like, with the distances, but it doesn't offer the distances to other adjacent schools where there's an opportunity to cluster. And that's what the parents are telling me. They're not satisfied. They're maybe satisfied to have a cluster arrangement, but not the one that's being proposed here. And I would want to be involved in discussions with parents to ensure that the aspirations of them and their children are achieved as much as we can possibly do that. And that's not with the parent the paper we have today. So I'd want to see that, and I'd want to be involved in an intensive discussion with parents at a later date to ensure as much as possible we reach their aspirations.
Thank you very much for that. I think, yes, we probably did make a historical mistake making a school in Thornhill larger than it needed to be. And I would agree that it's caused problems, but I think that the catchment and zoning review next year may address some of those issues. We need to pick up on any points so far, Anne. Are you quite happy for me to keep going just now, and we'll do a big list at the end? Councillor McClung, and then Councillor Yin, Tate and Vice Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. First one's just a bit of information. The figure of 150 for a non-teaching head teacher comes from an agreement with the LNCT and the council that was agreed by the LNCT on the 22nd of June 2010. That document is freely available on the council website. That's where I found it. Regarding what parents think of the clusters, yeah, the parents are really important. However, I have a cluster in my ward that was forced upon 2 schools because one of the schools had a retiring head teacher and a replacement couldn't be found no matter, I think it was advertised at least 3 times. We're in a position there now, the teachers of both schools are extremely happy, the children of both schools are extremely happy, yet there are still some parents of both schools that don't like it. But the teachers and the pupils would not go back to the previous arrangement.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Yin.
Thanks, Chair. I welcome this report coming to this committee. We need to look at this as an education benefit for our children and young people. I am behind the cluster working review and work that has been carried out so far. We have got the reassurance from the Director of Education regarding his commitment to Duncow Primary School to keep the existing dual zone with Dumfries High School and Wallace Academy and continue free transport. I would like to draw members' attention on Appendix 11, the A3 colour copy, page 3, item 19, Cullen and Musso. Under catchment secondary, Duncow dual zone to Dumfries High School / Wallace Academy. Then the next one, zoning proposals, highlighted by the red pen, zone Duncow to Dumfries High School. After her director's reassurance, would this be meaning this red highlighted pen, proposal should be deleted from this paper? Or what? Is this a mistake? Why is this proposal under Cullen and Musso, not under Duncow School? Item 18.
Okay, thanks, Chair. I'll go back to the point I made earlier. Although this is an appendix which talks about specific clustering, which has been part of the discussions as we've gone out and continued dialogue with parents. Even up until very recently, I think last week, there are minor amendments to the specific proposals around pairings on the basis of dialogue with parents. So I come back to the point that is not part of the full recommendations here. The recommendations are about the principle of phasing over a period of time, the implementation of the cluster working review in relation to phasing out specific posts. What I've said about Duncow, just to be absolutely clear, is that whilst at the moment the decision that was taken in November at the Education Committee, it meant that Duncow is now formally single-zoned to the high school. What I'm saying is that in practice, all current parents and therefore pupils and their younger brothers and sisters would continue with the current arrangement that they have in terms of free transport to Wallace Hall until they leave the system. If there's no revision to the situation, new pupils starting in 2014 would not be in that situation. However, we've already committed to looking at that in the 2014 review of catchment, so there's a further opportunity to look at that anomalous situation. And I think we have to take on board the views of the head teachers that are there, and I think we have to take on board Jim Dempster's view, because actually it's quite an interesting one that he's highlighted too. The historical issue around Wallace Hall might be something that also needs to be taken into account. But we've got a wee bit of time to do that because it won't affect parents at the moment.
That clarification. I think it's actually maybe just a typo on the appendix, and it's just meant to be in the column further up. Just a typo. Okay, Councillor Tate, and then the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to go back slightly. Could someone explain to me what programme office is, please? Just to benefit me, for being a new member, please.
I'm an old member and I'm still not terribly familiar with it. Anne, can you explain what programme office is in layman's terms?
It's a computer program, a project management system, and it basically allows you to put in all of the milestones and all of the background papers so that you maintain it on a monthly basis, which we did throughout the entire general consultation cluster working review. And then we were advised by governance that everything has to be held on there and all the background go on there. And we were assured that every member knew programme office well.
I'll make no comment on that. I think the point was that we were all supposed to know how to access programme office, which is maybe a governance issue more than an education issue, if I'm being honest. Vice Chair, and then I have second speakers, Councillor Wiper and Marshall.
Thanks, Chair. I wanted to go back so much because they have been constants through the whole debate. The issue of the schools between 100 and 150, which is clearly a significant one. I think whatever we do with that, there are two particular issues of concern that I have. Were they not to be included and remained as they are? The first being that you would retain then 4 schools only that would still have class committee heads if you did nothing else. And you wouldn't either have overcome the issue of the continuity that I think there probably has been broad general agreement would be a good thing to have really for all of our children in the primary sector. That's, of course, if there is no alternative. The cluster working review certainly presents, I think, quite a manageable and sensible way of achieving those things. I'm very interested to hear what alternatives might possibly be, given that we were in a situation where class committee headship started at roles below 150. It would seem to me to have been unwise to exclude them too early on, because the natural result of that would be to essentially perpetuate a two-tier system where you would still have some class committee a very, very small number, a really very small number indeed, and all of the subsequent concerns about how might you recruit in the future would therefore naturally at least run some risk of continuing, as I say, if there were no alternative. I do think that Councillor Wiper raised a very good point as well, in as much as it's not an idea that sprang into the minds of the authority overnight, I think. I mean, it did come from a very large number of the head teachers who are currently class committed, and it's raised significant concerns had about actually doing everything that they were all of a sudden being required to do, or that had grown up incrementally over time. And I think that it's been absolutely the right and appropriate thing to do to listen very carefully to what they said to us, because they know the job best, and see what we could do within, at this point, a cost-neutral envelope to try and address the concerns we had. I also think that the director made a very good point. We're not dashing into this. Certainly there's a start date in June, but we're going to take 3 years. I would like to get to a position where every school was happy with what they ended up with. I don't know if we can get there, but that should certainly be our aim. And we should be very clear, I think, that during the course of the 3 years, we have a good deal, in fact, a great deal of oversight of how it's actually developing and going on. One of the things I would like to see as recommended to full council is that we get reports back here every 6 months on what's actually happening. Personally, I have no particular concern with that going to full council as well, given that this issue is itself going to full council. I think that we need to be very clear to everybody that's involved in this, that we're not simply taking a decision on Thursday and closing the book on it and saying, that's fine, get on with it. This is the last word. Anything but. I think it's something that we need to look at very carefully over the 3 years as it develops and as it changes. And I suppose the final point I would make is that by the very nature of this, this whole business, it's one of the things that I suppose I struggled to get to grips with when I came onto this committee. The fact that education, in terms of roll numbers, is a constantly moving target. We've got a school in Wigtonshire that is going to run out of pupils as matters stand. Equally, we will have schools that will increase above the 150 as well, which is all the more reason that we take our time over 3 years and we carry on reviewing it. And we actually do it in a very incremental, cautious, gentle process and take people with us. So I hope the members will consider that additional recommendation to full council, that we keep on looking at this on a 6-monthly basis.
Yeah, I would completely concur with that view, and I think when we get to recommendations, we'll ensure that that's embedded within the recommendations of full council. Councillor Wiper and then Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point that Councillor Weaver brought up some time ago, that consultations brought out that parental choice in regards to Duncow and Wallace Hall was vastly in favour of staying with Wallace Hall. Well, if we're going to give that consideration to Duncow, I think we really have to give the same consideration to Bridekirk, because they have in an email here said that they have a unanimous decision by all parents and staff at Bridekirk that they don't want to go to Elmvale. So we can't really apply one consideration to one set of schools and not to other sets where parental choice is it's the same thing, it's parental choice. So why should Duncow get one set of standards and Bridekirk shouldn't get another? I'm not saying it's right what's happening, that Bridekirk should break away from Elmvale, but they should be given consideration, the same consideration as Duncow's being given. Now, and also just a point of clarification, these pairings, are they going to be brought before Education Committee to be debated, discussed, approved at some point?
I'll just pick up on the Elmvale, Bridekirk. Elmvale and Bridekirk are two primary schools which we're proposing to pair together. Duncow is a primary school which was dual zoned to Wallace Hall High School. It's not, it's a completely different issue. The parental choice for the parents at Bridekirk is whether they send them to Annan Academy or Lockerbie Academy, and I do know that an awful lot of them choose to pay for a bus to go to Lockerbie Academy. Aye, they're not sending the kids to Elmvale though, so it was just to clarify that the kids won't be sent to Elmvale.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are two issues there. There is the point of principle about parental choice in general. There is a very significant difference between the two situations, because the decision as to whether Duncow is still part of Wallace Hall actually makes a physical and financial difference potentially to future parents. Whereas the question of whether Bridekirk links to Elmvale or another primary is unlikely to make that kind of level of difference. On the point of principle, it's really critical to take on board as far as is possible and reasonable parental views and parental choice. But were we to try to run the whole service based on each parent's choice of what they would like it to be run like, it would be practically impossible. You know that we've got 40,000 parents. And so, all I'm saying there is that, yeah, if we have a whole school, if we've got 100% of parents who have a view about something, we can't ignore that. I quite agree with that. But we have to go and unpick some of that, get to the bottom of some of that, and look at what alternatives there are. But we've got to recognise that there are 123, I keep saying 126, it used to be 126, keep losing schools here and there, but we've got over 120 schools out there. And whilst we can take on board and look at parental views, we have a duty to also look how that impacts holistically on the whole service. So I think it's trying to get a balance, and I think it's a good point that you raised.
Brief point, Councillor White.
Just I want to try and clarify. I actually wasn't about specifics of any schools. It could be any schools in the whole region. The point was, if you allow parental choice to influence decision in one set of schools, then the same thing should be applied to another set of schools. And I think if you have a consultation that comes back and says that 100% of parents are against a decision, then there's no point in having that consultation unless you're going to take that on board.
No, fair point. Councillor Marshall, and then
Yeah, Chair, I think I'm a first-time speaker on the debate. I think my original, when I first came in, it was just for a point of clarification on the report. But thanks for letting me in. I think the first thing is the director said that he's really acting upon the recommendation from November. Our concern at the time, the Labour group made their views clear, was that we felt that the consultation would be flawed after that because he was seeking an in-principle agreement. That's what the report was written as, and we were forced down that route. And then the first question is why? Why did you not have the confidence to go out and speak to the parents, to the teachers, to the communities? Because basically, I think it was an extensive consultation process, but you can see by the numbers that many that I've spoke to felt it was a fait accompli, that the decision had all been taken. And I think going forward, you will have to actually be mindful of that in the future, because basically that did have an effect on the consultation. And that's my views and the views of the Labour group. I think when you look, and none of us have actually really talked about, we hear about this magic 150, and it was 12 years ago it was decided, and we haven't really got a paper, we haven't got the background to it. That should have been introduced sometime within the process. But there's a clear issue here that most people that you talk to wouldn't define a small school as being over 100. And I think what people are missing the point is that not only have got concerns from the schools that have got rolls over 100, like Elm Vale, but we also have genuine concerns from the schools that are going to be partnered with them, because basically they feel as though, for one instance, they could be swallowed up by such a large school. And I think Councillor Witt said, this is about our rural schools. Well, if you look at the Elmvale Bridekirk situation, Elmvale is an urban school. It's within the third largest settlement in Dumfries and Galloway. And what Bridekirk are saying is that basically they're not opposed to the principle of partnership, but with the right partner, with a similar rural school within the locale. And if you look at the proposals, there's one there where you're twinning three of them, not as bad as extraterrestrial. I'm still on the same planet, but you've got Hodham, Hotchbridge, and Eaglesfield. So I do think there is, there is scope to actually relook at that again. But it's clear we have an issue with the schools that are over 100. And if you look at the issue with regards to, we've been told now that this 20% drop in school rolls, it's bottomed out now, so we are going to increase. And the prediction for Elm Vale is potentially in 3 years' time, which might be at the end of this process, it might be over 150 pupils. And if it's not just through people actually selecting that, one of the positive things that's came out of this, which myself and Councillor Ogilvie have asked for a number of years, is that there's a long time awaiting kind of review of the whole catchment area of Annan. We've got issues. We've got a school at capacity at Newington, over capacity where we're building porta cabins to house them, whereas we've got Elmvale and Hecklegarth where we've got spare capacity. So really, I think a little bit of common sense here We really need to actually look at the schools over 100. That's what people are telling us. But we also have to remember that the concerns from the other schools is not about a partnership, but partnership with an organisation or a school that's over 100.
Councillor Marshall, thank you very much for that. I know that there's been issues over the 100 and 150, and it was very clearly stated that we were looking at the difference between teaching heads and non-teaching heads, and that's been reiterated right throughout the review. That is the figure that we've looked at, and that's why it's in the papers. I'll let the director come in on a couple of those points. From my perspective, this has never been about saving rural schools. It's been about having a professional review of our senior management models in schools, our head teachers, how they operate. And the 150 and below it is, to me, and it has always been the rationale behind the pairings. It's not been about urban and rural. And I think that I need to make that very clear, that while we do have some very small rural primary schools that we do want to preserve, this has been about a wider professional review. And 2 years of long work involved in that review. Director, do you want to come in on a couple of the other points?
Perhaps the director could address it when he's speaking. You're looking to take head teachers out of teaching. Now, you've got 59 schools here, you've got 27 groupings, and by my calculations, there's 7 groupings over 150. So you've released 7 head teachers from the teaching. Is that the case? I just wonder if then justifies the means.
No. Right. I'll try to pick up on the first 3 points from Councillor Marshall first. The 150, if we can go back to that, because we recognised the number of people who were asking that question, I remitted that question to the group, professional group, which involved 9 head teachers and other officers, to have a look at that question again very, very seriously. When they reported back that they felt really strongly that we should not have class committed teachers in those size of schools, we took a further step to see what it would cost to make them non-class committed without pairing, and we've put all of that information there for you. But having remitted it to the group, I'm duty bound, I think, to take that professional view and present it to you, and that's what we've done. The second point that you raised, Councillor, was about, and I think it's a really interesting point about Annan, and this is where you get into the challenges around trying to manage a service professionally and recognise parental choice. The difficulty, the sizes of schools in Annan don't really relate to you can't resolve that by changing catchments, because a lot of the schools in Annan don't have kids from their own catchment. It's parental choice that dictates the size of schools, because the transport's not a particular problem, and therefore, whilst we welcome parental choice, that's where you sometimes end up with a holistic picture that's quite difficult to manage professionally, and that's the sort of situation in Annan, and that's where you have to get a good balance there. There was a third point I've forgotten, I'm sorry. Well, again, that was in November, and you're going back to the fact that members had a choice to reject that. The in-principle agreement came because of a review that had previously taken the year before to look at all the professional issues, and we came forward with what strong recommendations we would have about the best way to address that. But again, at that committee, members were slightly uncomfortable at signing the whole thing off, and that's why it was in principle, but go back and come back with specifics and come back with a timeline. Councillor McKee asked a question that I didn't fully understand, so maybe you repeat it, please.
Right. My understanding is primary teachers need over 150 in school before they do not teach. Now, with all this work you've done, 59 schools into 27 groupings, and you've only got 7 schools over the 150. They then justify the means.
Sorry, but where we pair schools together, even if it doesn't come to 150, they are non-teaching heads. So as soon as you're overseeing more than one school, you become a non-teaching head, and the 150 doesn't apply. It's only within single schools that the 150 applies, and that's because of the number of classes that would be in a school with 100.
Councillor Diggle.
Thank you, Chair. Just on Elmdale, I understand that there is likely to go over the 150 in the near future. Should that be the case, I assume then it would be taken out of the cluster review. What would happen to Bridekirk in those circumstances?
My view on that would be that whilst we need to retain flexibility about what's working and isn't, and therefore if over a period of time a school significantly changes in nature, then we should be able to dissolve a partnership if necessary. I think what remains to be seen is A, whether it will go up over 150, that's the first thing, because it's not an exact science, the estimation of figures. We've got all sorts of schools that have got completely different numbers from what we expected over a period of time. But the second issue is that, and this is where we would be, our professional view would be that over the phasing, we wouldn't recommend something to you that we didn't think benefited kids and families. Our professional view is that you would always expect there to be some resistance to change, and that's completely understandable. But because we're doing this over a phased period of time, and each cluster comes together at the time where we're comfortable with the arrangement and we begin to develop improvement, I think we will find over time that parents and kids and staff become very comfortable with the arrangements, see the benefits, and therefore, you know, that whilst that phasing's there, you could reach a situation where there is an option if a school goes over 150. And the option might well be to pull back from where you are, but actually the two communities might find it bringing enormous benefits to the children. And therefore, you wouldn't want to put a set rule in place. I think what we would agree is that you would review it at any stage that happened on a manageable way. Now, we're already saying that we'll bring back on a 6-monthly basis reports on implementation. There's a full review scheduled already for 2015, so there is every opportunity to look at where situations have changed and try to deal with those.
Councillor Diggle.
Thank you for that. I'm not sure you've totally answered my question, but you have said it will be reviewed. And I welcome that.
Yeah, if a school goes over 150, that would be one that we would review. And if it's the wishes of the parents and councils at that, communities at that time, for that to be dissolved, then of course we would look at that really carefully. What I'm saying is you may find out that partnerships are built up that work very, very well, and in fact the parents don't want to change. I wouldn't want to second guess that. That's all I'm saying.
And presumably on that basis, that if the communities at that point did find that things were working well, what you would actually do is put additional senior management in to offset a deputy or a post of that nature. So they could potentially end up with even more managerial expertise within the cluster. I would.
Well, the LNC have an agreement within with dependent role. But we have built in a review, and our experience of partnerships that have already established is that it takes about 18 months for them to go through what is quite a painful process because it's change and it's a challenge and it's different. But at the end of that period, every single one of the partnerships that have established already have come back and said, we want this to be permanent because they recognise the benefits. So what we've done is built in 2015-16 a review of each partnership, but that's not to say that we're not going to be with them until then. We have an induction programme for head teachers to support them through the process, and we will constantly be working with them, not just myself, but with other members of our quality improvement team working with them as well throughout the process. This is about making it work for children, and that's what we have to keep in our mind.
Thank you very much for that. I have one final speaker, and then I'm going to move to recommendations. Councillor Nicholl.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. How do you mean to implement this if it gets through, if it gets approved? Is it on a geographical basis, or is it an alphabetical basis, or is it just as the occasion arises that it becomes convenient to do so?
It's fairly complicated, but it's been laid out really, really clearly because we've got full agreement with LNCT in terms of the guidance and order, and there's phasing in terms of offering ERVS to people that are in places already. I think is it contained in one of the appendices on that full order?
Yes, there's an implementation timetable in the appendices which outlines how we're going to go through the process. Initially, it will be on a voluntary basis. Those head teachers who have put in a note of interest of early retirement, and there's over 20 have done that. Then when we have got, if this goes through, then obviously everybody will then make their final decision of whether they wish to continue to take that early retirement, and those will be the partnerships that we'll first establish, and those will be the head teachers that we will match into post, and that will take place between August and December. So, and then thereafter there are another 2 phases, one which will include anywhere where there's a 3-way partnership, and also finally will be those people who are of non-retired age. So it's trying to do it in a sensible and kind of gentle way, so that people will recognise the benefits as we go through the process, and that will give a bit of reassurance to parents.
Sorry, I was just going to point out that Appendix 4, pages 105 and 106, give a clear indication of the process for appointing head teachers to partner schools, and you know, there's 2 pages there that do give clarifications to that. Councillor Marshall, is it on that point?
It's with regards to, before we go to the recommendations, just it was an earlier point that was made, and I think I did get a sort of assurance that with regards to the business case, that information would be available at full council on Thursday. So it was really just on that basis, because it's missing from this report. The work is there. You have to check out, with regards to confidentiality. We don't need to say teachers' names or anything like that. It's just, I think that information, the fullest information, should be provided to full council to justify a neutral cost basis as per the report at item 4.
I don't anticipate any problem in principle there. I just don't like guaranteeing something that I don't know the answer to. Yeah. So we've got to pay. We'll check that with finance. I don't see any difficulty in sending that even under confidential notice to all members.
I think what we'll do is we'll seek to clarify that first and inform members what we're able to do before Thursday. In terms of governance and HR and finance, I'm not going to make that commitment here today, and I'm at the moment going to move to recommendations. I think
on the point of information, it's on the point of information before we actually take the decisions, because there was commitment given to get back to councillors with some information, and a lot of it, and despite Councillor McClung's intervention in the 150, we actually asked the officer for and they said they didn't know, it's over 10 years old, etc. So, and the figure wasn't mentioned in November. So I think
he said he would go away and clarify.
Yeah, so I think we'll ask for information here, and it's specific, and the director's nodding about. And also we ask for the information back from the consultation and what parents want and what their alternative views are.
Anne?
In terms of our consultation with what parents wanted was to have a head teacher, non-class in every school in Dumfries and Galloway, and a class teacher.
Chair, that is not asked for. Asked for specifics. Asked for actual feedback from the consultation, not an overall view of anything like that. So I would like that information to find out what from each school, what the information was from parents and that. So.
Thanks, Chair. We can only give you what we've got, and we've given you what we've got, to be honest with you. Well, no, I didn't say that. No.
Okay, moving to recommendations. I do actually think it's been a very good consultation, but I think what's more important is that where schools have had issues, officers have continued to liaise and meet with them on a regular basis. And I know that Rachel Craig and Anne met with, for instance, Trees and Crutherstone only last week. And there is ongoing dialogue with that, and I would expect that to continue as well. As I say, moving to the recommendations, I think we've picked up a few points, and it will probably mean, as I move the recommendations from my perspective, that we will need to do a bit of number changing, because obviously we're referring this to full council. We're not making a decision on it today. We're taking an educational view, and we're referring it to full council for all 47 members to make a decision either way on Thursday. So what I would propose to do, as the recommendations are just now, is move 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4 as are, and then add in a 2.5, and this is where you'll need to stop with my numbering. No, Councillor Marshall, please. No, no, we didn't agree. We did not agree. because we didn't request that, we didn't agree that. I'm going down through the recommendations. I've moved 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4 as are, and add a 2.5 to note that after the review is fully implemented and all matching redeployment carried out. Can you give me the end of the words there? Future
recruitment processes will fully involve parents as that.
And that's 2.5. 2.6, note that education staff will engage with LNCT to consider potential involvement in appointment of principal teachers in clusters. And then at 2.7, that the Education Committee receives 6-monthly monitoring and scrutiny reports on the implementation of cluster working arrangements, and if anything in relation to role should arise, that we will react to that as appropriate. And then that would then make 2.5, 2.8. I have a copy of that if you wish.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lever.
In that case, we move an amendment to 2.2. Quite happy with the... can we move them one at a time rather than in block?
I've moved on block. If you have an amendment to my motion, please put it forward.
That we move them individually.
So you want to, you have an amendment to move them one at a time to my motion to agree the 2.8. Okay, that's fair.
Chairman, there's a motion by yourself, seconded by the Vice Chairman, to take the recommendations 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4 as they are, and with your additional recommendations, the amendment by Councillor Lever, seconded by Councillor Nicholson, is to take recommendations one at a time.
Yeah, just clarification, we're not actually voting on the recommendations, it's just on the process of taking them forward.
No, Councillor Marshall, governance, that's fine. You said...
I'm asking governance advice.
Through the chair.
Chairman, sorry. This vote is whether you're taking them on block or one at a time, not the actual recommendation. No. I'll to be correct.
My understanding is that I have moved and seconded recommendations 2.1 to 2.8 as they are. If you wish to have an amendment to take them one at a time, that will stand against the motion to agree 2.1 to 2.8.
Chair, I think you're just ignoring.
If we're moving them on block in that case, can I move an amendment to 2.2 and agree them on block?
Councillor Lever, are you actually agreeing with all the recommendations apart from 2.2? Is that the point here? So perhaps we just move on from that and then, yep.
Didn't quite catch 2.7, if you could just repeat that.
2.7 was to the Education Committee received 6 monthly monitoring and scrutiny reports on the implementation of the cluster working arrangements, and should there be any change in role, that would be reported back to committee and dealt with on a reactive basis.
Clarification for something else, Chair, as well. And I'm presuming I'm reading this 2.3 correctly, but I just want to be absolutely sure. If they're all agreed except 2.2, and 2.3 says agree for schools detailed in 2.2 to the implementation of partnerships and consequent introduction of non-class committed head teachers, we're not talking about necessarily the partnerships that are illustrated here. That is still to be determined. Is that right?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Brodie,
Just whether you would accept, in addition to 2.7, to incorporate some of the things which you and other members have said, to add, we recognise the remaining concerns at some schools and agree to continue discussions to resolve these concerns.
Be very happy to incorporate that.
Thank you.
I'm getting a bit confused now. Governance, please.
You have a motion before you, seconded by the Vice Chairman, Councillor Lever. Do you have an amendment?
Yeah, it's amendment to 2.2. we agree that on the basis of the responses to the consultation process from parents, parent councils and head teachers, all schools with a pupil roll of 100 or fewer remain part of the cluster working review, so the numbers reduced.
Thank you.
Members, Chairman, yourself, members feel they have a significant knowledge of all the recommendations put forward in the motion? Do they want them repeated before I go to the vote? Are you quite happy that you know what you're voting on before I proceed?
Councillor Witts. Councillor McComb.
Could I hear 2.5 again, please?
Director, would you like to read 2.5 out? Because this was one of your ones.
It was to note that after the review is fully implemented and all matching redeployment is carried out, that future recruitment processes will fully involve parents as at present.
Councillor McComb. Sorry? 2.8. 2.8 is 2.5. We've just had to move them down to, and obviously at 2.8, what it would actually read is acknowledge the strategic implications of the cluster review and agree that the recommendations outlined in paras 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.5, 2.6 and 2.7 above are remitted as recommendations of the Education Committee to the full council at its meeting on the 30th of May. Okay? Here, I think we can proceed to the vote.
Chairman.
Motion.
No, sorry, I haven't. It's a good double act here. Chairman, just for clarification, the motion by yourself, seconded by the Vice Chairman, is to agree 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4 as they are. Additional 2.5, 2.6 and 2.7 as read out. And 2.5 becomes 2.8 with the addition that we have these additional recommendations. The amendment by Councillor Lever, seconded by Councillor Nicholson, is to agree everything that in the motion's entirety, apart from 2.2, should read agree that all schools with a pupil roll of 100 or fewer remain part of the cluster working review. Is everyone quite clear? Yep. Chairman, motion or amendment?
Motion.
Vice Chairman?
Motion.
Councillor Brodie? Councillor Dempster?
Amendment.
Councillor Diggle? Councillor Gilroy? Councillor Yen?
Motion.
Councillor Lever? Councillor McClung?
Motion.
Councillor McComb?
Motion.
Councillor McKee?
Amendment.
Councillor Marshall?
Amendment.
Councillor Nicholson? Councillor Nicholl? Councillor Stitt? Councillor Tate?
Motion.
Councillor Witt? Councillor Wiper? Mr McQuiston? Reverend McFadden? Canon Paisley? Motion is successful by 11 votes to 7. 3 abstentions.
Thank you very much, members. I think that was a very good debate, very important piece of work, and we'll look forward to seeing what happens on Thursday. I have no further business, and thank you all very much for your contribution.